Welcome to the Rosenfeld Review podcast, where we're just a bunch of blind men trying to find the elephant. I'm Lou Rosenfeld, your host, and I'm here today with Christian Madsbjerg. Hello, Christian. How are you?
Hello. I'm good.
It's great to have you join us. Christian, you may know a bit about. He has written a couple of very interesting books. Sensemaking, The Power of the Humanities in the Age of the Algorithm, and The Moment of Clarity, Using the Human Sciences to Solve Your Toughest Business Problems. Christian is the co-founder of Red Associates, and he teaches at the New School for Social Research in the practical application of the human sciences. And I wanted to ask you what that meant. That's a very interesting area to be teaching in. Can you flesh that out for me?
Yes, I can try. If you look at most humanities degrees in history or art history or philosophy or comparative literature, they are very specialized and very focused on the idea that all the students can get tenure in the academic world eventually. So if you're a historian, you're not very prepared to maybe take on other jobs than the ones that your professors have. And that's a shame, because you might end up not doing the kinds of things you love. So there, in the big companies of the world or in the public sector, there are many philosophers that are not doing philosophy, and historians that are not doing history. And that's a shame, because the techniques a historian or a philosopher learn and know about are incredibly helpful if they are directed at topics that seem meaningful, sort of contemporarily meaningful in a company or so on. And the reason why I'm now trying to teach that and write about it as a professor at the New School is that it is shown to be helpful for me and for a firm I founded. So Red Associates, that's a firm I founded a decade ago. And it's just obviously reasonable thing to do, but not something that there's a job market for. And I think sort of that's what the next 20 years of my life will be about, is to try to create a job market. But a lot of the reason why it's not helpful is that the humanities have become so insular and so focused on details about details. And if you want to be a PhD in, philosophy, you have to treat a small puzzle in the world of philosophy and write papers to 5 other people, rather than being engaged in the practical realities of companies or public sector institutions. So that's the idea, and I think it's supremely helpful.
But well, you're making me feel better as a refugee from a PhD program, ABD, and one of the things that I really found frustrating about my academic experience was I think you used the term insularity. I mean, we talk a lot about silos in industry, and I can't think of a more siloed environment than a university. And I found it quite frustrating. And actually, when I left and made my way into what's become the user experience world, quite liberating to be able to pull and pick and choose the interesting challenges, but also the interesting techniques and methods that came from different practices, and put them together to do some synthesis and to come up with some really interesting challenges and work in my career. And I know that's true for a lot of people in our industry. It sounds like you went through that as one of the founders of Epic. Did you feel that there was a point at which maybe the standard practice of, let's say, anthropology just wasn't working for you, and you needed to kind of push it into a new place with broader problems to solve?
I'm very fond of anthropology, and I think it's a technique that is helpful. I'm not an anthropologist. I studied philosophy, so I'm not a tribal member. but its ethnography in particular and some of the theories of coming out of anthropology are generally unique in terms of understanding some things, and that's why I like it, and I still like it, and I'm a huge fan of that world. But it's not the only thing. I mean, if you want to make a new car or a piece of software or overhaul healthcare in North America,
Please.
please. But if you're trying to do that, which they were 5-6 years ago, then just having ethnographic information would be incredibly reckless, right? So, anthropology is a way of getting to causation, but not large-scale correlation. And you need statistics, and you need those kinds of things. You need randomized trials to really be sure that a vehicle or a fleet or a portfolio of products are the ones you ought to make before. So I think it's anthropology is a helpful tool, but standing alone, it is too risky to base decisions on alone. So I'm a huge fan, and I enjoy it, and it's a major part of my life, but I'm not naive in terms of the limits of it.
So, speaking of limits, I think one of the challenges that we're facing right now, especially for researchers, as we become seen as more valuable and even, dare I say, strategic in large organizations, we're trying to increase our profile. We're trying to become part of conversations that are happening at the C-level when we can. It's not just having a seat at the table, it's knowing what to do with it. But I wonder, in your work, if you're seeing a certain naivete among researchers about the impact of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Are we prepared? Do we understand what the impact of those technologies and those techniques are going to be as we do research more strategically?
I think there are two naive positions that come even before the data science problem or data science opportunity right now. And the first one is understanding business, understanding that research is a component, and not understanding the kinds of trade-offs and decisions that are made from a business perspective, pure business perspective, is hugely important to understand if you want to be an effective researcher. And I think a lot of people in the research world underestimate that. And it's for me, the analogy would be moving to France and not learning French.
Mm-hmm.
It's just prohibitive in terms of your influence. So that's one side. The other side is the word user research. User research comes out of human-computer interaction or human factor research. And that is about machine-man interfaces and understanding how people use things. And that is a practical input into research, into a product development, and into how to shape and humanize things. But at a company level, at a corporate level, and a strategy level, that's not how you should look at people. You should look at people as people, and you should look at them way beyond how they sort of practically interact with things. And I think it's a problem that the research world, particularly the anthropology-based or ethnography-based research world, has been married to design, to product design. I think that's one component, but cost reduction, marketing, portfolio management, corporate strategy are all beyond user research. So I would say the user research world is limiting itself to practical interactions between product and people rather than the whole scope of business. So that's sort of the basic problem. Then the AI or machine learning situation is beyond that, right? So it is clear that we now have bigger data sets than we've had before. and there are all kinds of limits to them. The data is dirty, it's biased, it's collected only on our digital lives, all kinds of problems, but it's there, and it's possible now to make multi-factor analysis with bigger computational power. And we now have a diet of data that we can feed algorithms that we didn't have before. So not taking that into account is ridiculous. That is, however, it has big problems to it. I saw this piece of research the other day where trying to predict social behavior in terms of hiring people and how well they will do in a job was done in two ways. One way was AI-based, or so-called AI-based, which was more than 1,500 variables in order to predict whether a person would be helpful, not helpful, and stay and be productive and grow in the company. And then hand-calculated predictions based on 4 to 5 variables. And it turned out that they were as predictive, the two approaches, and both of them very close to the prediction of flipping a coin. So the jury is still out whether AI-based or machine learning-based, large data set-based, I can now do facial recognition. It can do natural language processing in a way that's amazing. But can it predict social behavior? I think that's still a discussion. And if it ever is to do that, it is in a combination with deeply qualitative research.
So, obviously people who come from the research side of the UX world who may be, folks with backgrounds in HCI who are, grappling with data science and increasingly quant perspectives in their organizations have a long way to go. We have to learn not only the language, but the tools. And yet, I wonder if you're seeing the reverse happening. Are the people coming from quant perspectives starting to value the more qualitative and even somewhat intuitive approaches that that the types of researchers that you might see in the UX world bring to the table?
Yes, I think absolutely. Facebook hired more than 800 social science-based, UX-based researchers in the last 2 years because they were limited by one type of analysis. Google is doing the same.
Mm-hmm.
Places like Waymo that built incredible technology for cars that can automate parts of driving are running into problems with human nonlinear behavior. So across the board, there are experiments with social science qualitative components built in to quantitative statistics-based models. And I think that wasn't the case 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a big reckoning with a data lake build out and big data investments that happened 5-6 years ago, where it just turned out it was a little bit harder than it was supposed to be.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you want more, not only do we have a whole bunch of podcasts in our archive, but we have something that's very current, very alive, and very engaging for groups, and that is our communities. Rosenfeld Media runs a variety of communities that meet on a monthly basis for video conferences on a variety of topics near and dear to UX people, ranging from enterprise experience to advancing research to design and research operations. I want to encourage you to join one of our communities. Again, it is free by going to rosenfeldmedia.com/communities. Not only will you get a monthly video conference that you can listen in on and participate in, ask questions and so forth, give you access to the recordings. And for some of those communities, we're talking about dozens of recordings with really interesting presenters and facilitators. You'll also get a newsletter. You'll get access to an advice columnist. Yes, we actually are providing advice columnists for each community. And finally, if you're interested in our conferences, our communities correspond to our conferences. So you will be the first to know when programs go live, when tickets go on sale, and by the way, most of our conferences sell out, and other good things about our conferences, such as when the scholarship applications open up. So go to rosenfeldmedia.com/communities. You're going to find something that's free, something that's interesting, and it's a great opportunity to find your tribe as well. We'll see you there. So how do you see the successful organizations that are making the investments in both data science and social science influenced research? How are they putting them together? I mean, it's just so common to see organizations talk the talk and even make the investment. But when it comes to walking the walk, I mean, it's difficult to put these people together. You've already pointed out that, for example, they may not speak the same language. They have different tool sets, different biases. How do you construct an organization that's really centered on insight and not on just acquiring or producing different data sets from different smart people who never talk to each other?
There's not a lot of people that have fixed this, if any. There's a lot of tribal behavior going on.
Yeah.
And I'd say it's worse on the social science side or a softer side. I don't like that word, but the qualitative side than it is on the quantitative side. I think people like me, who's got a humanities background, are much more hostile to people from a statistics or computer science background than the other way around. And that's a self-inflicted problem.
Why do you think that is?
Because of education, because we're educated to not liking other ways of doing things and criticizing the world rather than experimenting. And I think there's a big problem in the humanities departments that are frankly ruining people's life. And I don't know if I would be comfortable with my children studying humanities right now, even though I absolutely adore all the topics. I think if you're not careful, you can end up being without a job for life, or in constant tribal warfare with people that you really should try to experiment with.
But what is it about the statisticians, let's say, that helps them not fall prone to this type of chauvinism? I mean, they come out of academic environments too. Is it just that they're more driven toward experimentation?
Yeah, and they are scientists. They have the mind of a scientist, which is you have hypotheses, but you are open to being wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first. And the second one is they're practical. They try to, they're not ideological. Where what has happened to our universities, particularly on the east and west coast of America, not so much in the heartland, the attitude is one of ideology and critique rather than one of experimentation and practical solutions. And there's a big role for critique in this world, and certainly the world needs to have heavy critique involved, politically, critique of capitalism, so on, social justice, environmental problems. But the attitude of already knowing what the outcome is, and already knowing that the world is unfair and that everything is biased against different groups, is not the mind of a scientist. That's a scientist is trying to understand rather than having the conclusions already, and it's prohibitive. So that's, I think, I quite enjoy the company of people with a statistics or a computer science background, because they just want to understand, and And then after you've understood, you can be heavy on critique, right? Because you know things rather than starting out with a critique. And that's the fault of universities, and it's getting worse.
So let's take this back up to the C-suite for a moment. Do you feel that the people leading organizations are more comfortable with that scientific thinking? Does the language resonate more with them? Or are they more likely to respond to the language of critique?
The first. I mean, they don't mind critique, and they don't mind. And the best ones have a Karl Popper kind of attitude, which is being open to being wrong and being more interested in whether you're wrong than proving that you're right. And I think that's a very, very healthy attitude for any researcher. And I'm, if anything, I'm pro Popper. So that's the comfort level. The other one is that the best managers I've met just want to have insight. They don't want prepackaged opinion and preconceived notions. They would like to just learn. And then on the basis of that, de-risk decisions or innovate based on insight. And I think that can come, those kinds of things come through a disinterested view at the world where you're trying to learn rather than trying to prove a point. You can prove points afterwards, and you can be heavy on critique, but please start with an open mind.
So let's stay just a little longer in the C-suite. The big challenge that those people face, especially in large publicly traded companies, is the factor of time and the pressure to perform in the short term at the expense of the long term. How do people with those different research backgrounds that we've talked about, social science and statistical, how do we help those senior leaders ground their decisions in long-term thinking? Is it even possible?
Of course it is. I mean, they are, quite often the top managers in the biggest companies have PhDs themselves, right? So they're sophisticated people that read every day and are, generally open to learn and often smarter than you are yourself, right? When you go in there, and often have a whole other contextual understanding of things that you might not have. At least that's certainly my case. I think if you go into a C-suite with the mindset of user experience as interaction between products and people and sort of highly practical approaches, they would have very little time for you. If you inform corporate strategy, or if you are part of seeing if particular bets and particular decisions are reasonable or possible or financially attractive or technically possible, then there's a lot of ear for you and a lot of really flexibility and open attitude to use research. And there's no decisions I've ever seen that wasn't somehow based on research. But because we, from a human science background, are often very hard to use, we might not always be the kind of research that's influencing decisions. And that's too bad for everybody.
I always like to, oversimplify this conversation in that, I think that people make decisions based on evidence, but also on stories. And I think too often in these conversations that we have in our industry, we think of quant people as the curators of evidence and the qual people as the storytellers. One thing I'm hopeful about is that we can get away from that dichotomy and understand that we both do both, and we do both better when we do together. And I wonder if you see much in the role of story playing a strong role in the C-suite Or if so, are the kinds of stories that are successful today a bit more robust than they used to be, and how?
I mean, I don't buy the, of course, like you say, I don't buy the dichotomy of stories versus evidence. Uh, I mean, there's a very famous essay by William James, the great psychologist, that's called Radical Empiricism. And the idea is that, when an economists say that they are empiricists in the sense that they are dealing with evidence and so on, the psychologists, or the sort of the, if you say American pragmatism in general, but so the attitude of an anthropologist or a good psychologist is that we haven't made up our minds about how human behavior works before we start, and economists have.
Mm-hmm.
They already know how that it's about incentives, and markets tend to equilibrium, and needs are transient, and those kinds of things, where we are sort of looking at it and trying to learn and then form an opinion and a set of assumptions. So actually, when I'm challenged by economists or people with that kind of background saying we're empiricists and you're a sort of story guy, I say, no, actually, I'm the empiricist here. I'm one step closer to reality than you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't buy the dichotomy of those two. Yet, I mean, it's clear that anything is driven by stories. So markets are driven by stories of bull markets and bear markets and risk and
Political
China
markets.
and exactly, of course, and it's just ridiculous to say that anyone isn't driven by stories. So it's just about being honest about how those stories come about, and seeing if those stories are really mapping onto reality. And any executive I've met, not any, but most executives, by far most executives I've met, are interested in stories and trying to explain things to themselves through understanding trend lines and stories and so on. But informed by evidence, of course. So this idea that some are soft and some are hard. I mean, I see myself as incredibly hard, kind of a scientist or somebody with that set of values. Even though some of the data I use are coming from observation of humans that are interpretive and hermeneutic. So it's a ridiculous dichotomy. Yet it's alive, and certainly, a story, I suppose.
I think the best storytellers among the economists are the behavioral economists, and it's precisely because they've reacted maybe to some of the overly I don't know. Do I even want to go there? Overly logical, hyper-logical view of how people behave that
Exactly.
has been taken in traditional economics.
That staring you in the face is completely ridiculous.
Yeah. Christian.
And untrue.
This is, I have a feeling as soon as I go to bed tonight, I'm going to have some really deep dreams about human psyche and how we make decisions. And also, I think I'm going to be thinking a lot about what you might speak about at our conference, Advancing Research, which is coming up in New York City, March 30th and 31st, 2020. So happy to have you as part of the program. We don't know yet what you'll cover, but I have no fear that there's a lot of interesting stuff you will cover. And this has just been a great taste of your thinking. I want to just mention before we sign off that I'm talking with Christian Madsbjerg, co-founder of Red Associates and author of many books, including 2 in English, The Moment of Clarity and the Sensemaking, Power of Humanities in the Age of the Algorithm. I know that you're working on a new book, How to Pay Attention. Do you want to give us a little preview of what you might cover there?
Yeah, I mean, the 2 books you mentioned are about Martin Heidegger, and I try to hide it as best as I can, but they're really about being in time and the description of worlds and moods and so on. Where the new book is about Merleau-Ponty, Maurice Merleau-Ponty, so French philosopher who took up some of the challenges of Heidegger, which is about perception. So how we understand the world, how we see the world, how color and shape and numbers and light, but also human interaction and how we see and how we see ourselves see. So the book is called How to Pay Attention. And it's about, well, it's really about how looking and listening to others work, and try to describe how to do it better and how to learn how to be good at it, really.
Something that will be very useful for not just the various researchers in the industry, but everyone. So I wish you luck with that.
That's what my publisher hopes.
Yes, as a publisher, I feel them, and I, I hope for the same for them. Before we wrap, I always like to ask our guests if there's anyone who's doing work that you believe deserves some more attention, or maybe a book or article that really stood out for you recently.
Two things. The first one is the book I mentioned, Radical Empiricism by William James. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you haven't read it, you should.
Okay.
And the second thing is the work of Jonathan Haidt, who is a professor at NYU.
Is that H-E-I-D-T?
H-A-I-D-T.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's a professor of psychology, but he wrote a book called The Righteous Mind a couple of years ago. But his new work is on the impact of social media on mood disorders and our mood. And that there unfortunately are correlations between the use of social media and suicide thoughts and hospitalization of particularly our girls, particularly our daughters. And that's something that the research community needs to take on immediately, because it's a national emergency, probably a global emergency that we all need to deal with. So for anybody interested in human behavior and interested in technology, that's probably the topic.
Christian, thanks so much for joining us. If you want to learn more about Christian Madsbjerg, his website is madsbjerg.com. Thanks again, Christian.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Rosenfeld Review, brought to you by Rosenfeld Media. If you like our show, please subscribe and review it on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast platform. I'd love it if you tell a friend to have a listen. And please check out our website for over 100 podcasts with other interesting people. You'll find them all at rosenfeldreview.com.